moved into apartment 307 6 months ago. The rent was unusually cheap for the area, but I didn't ask questions. I was 24, living alone for the first time, and working remotely. The building was old, but it was clean. The neighbors were quiet. Everything was fine, at least for the first few weeks. Then I started hearing footsteps. Not unusual footsteps. These came from the apartment directly above mine. Every night, exactly at 2:17 a.m. The strange part wasn't the noise, it was the pattern. The footsteps always followed the exact same route. 5 steps across the living room, a pause, 3 steps toward what should have been the kitchen, another pause, then 7 steps back, every single night, always identical. At first, I assumed it was an insomniac neighbor, someone pacing, someone with a routine. But after a month, I realized something. The timing never changed. Not by a second. People don't move like that. I tried ignoring it. Then, one night, the footsteps stopped halfway through the pattern. 5 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. Silence. I remember sitting upright in bed, waiting, listening. Nothing. The silence felt wrong. The next morning, I asked the building manager who lived upstairs. Then he checked his records. Nobody. I thought he was joking. He wasn't. Apartment 407 had been empty for nearly 2 years. I didn't believe him. So that evening, I went upstairs. The hallway was empty. Apartment 407 stood at the end. Dust covered the door. No welcome mat, no decorations, nothing. I knocked. No answer. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. When I looked through the narrow gap beneath the door, all I could see was darkness. I went back downstairs feeling embarrassed. Maybe the sound came from somewhere else. Maybe old buildings carried noise. That night, I stayed awake. At 2:17 a.m., the footsteps began. 5 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. 7 steps. I grabbed my phone and ran upstairs. The sounds continued while I stood outside apartment 407. They were definitely coming from inside. I could feel faint vibrations through the floor. Someone was walking around in there. I raised my hand to knock. The footsteps stopped. Instantly, the silence that followed felt deliberate, as if whoever was inside had realized I was standing there. I went back downstairs. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I searched online for information about the building. Most of the results were boring. Property records, renovation permits, nothing unusual. Then I found an old newspaper article. 20 years earlier, a woman named Laura had lived in apartment 407. She had vanished. No signs of forced entry. No suspects. No explanation. Her disappearance was never solved. The article included a photograph. A smiling woman standing in front of the building. Behind her was a window. Apartment 407. I stared at the image. Something felt familiar. Then I realized what it was. The position of her body, the angle of her shoulders, the direction she was facing. It matched the pattern of the footsteps. I couldn't explain why that bothered me. That night, I recorded the sounds. 5 steps. Pause. 3 steps. Pause. 7 steps. I played the recording over and over. Eventually, I imported the audio into a program used for editing podcasts. I don't know why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe obsession. I zoomed in on the waveform, and that's when I noticed something. The pauses weren't silent. There was a faint sound underneath them. I amplified it. The result made my stomach drop. It was breathing. Not walking. Breathing.